Welcome, anointed ones. When a soul awakens and steps into its true power, the environment itself revolts. Energy shifts, systems crack. You are not crazy, you are not overreacting, and you are absolutely not too sensitive. You are spiritually sensitive to the artificial simulation you were never meant to blend into. Your spirit has finally stopped pretending to be comfortable in a place it was never designed to stay. Here's the revelation. Research in quantum physics proves that human consciousness can alter reality at the subatomic level. That means you don't just leave toxic environments, you collapse them. You don't just walk away from false systems, you short-circuit them with your vibration. Every step you take now isn't just a move forward, it's a divine disruption of structures built against your destiny. So, when Elon Musk calls for a job interview, understand it for what it really is. A cosmic reflection of your inner power being recognized outwardly. Systems, leaders, and giants are feeling your energy. They realize that where you walk, the atmosphere changes. You're not entering their world for validation. You're being invited because they subconsciously sense that you carry what they cannot manufacture: real authority. The worst part is that this departure isn't a breakdown. Your spiritual graduation is taking place. Under the pretense of spiritual struggle, seclusion, and betrayal, you have been attending a soul university. Instead of failing, you rose. You broke the lock, went through the flames barefoot, and are now going to be crowned, while others remain dependent on the security of cages. Sacred rebellion, not in secrecy, nor in quiet. Therefore, believe that pull if you feel like you're going to leave everything behind, including the city, the career, the people, and the previous iterations of yourself. It's your heavenly GPS recalibrating your destiny, not fear. Take hold of your crown, choose one. Let's discuss why you are leading the way into the new earth, rather than just departing. First of all, you are being drawn by a greater magnetic law. You are not fleeing. You're leaving because something greater is dragging you, not because you're tired or burnt out. This is about being drawn out by something unseen but obvious, not about fleeing. In your bones, you sense it. You made an effort to remain. You have made an effort to persuade yourself to make it work. You've made an effort to compromise, shrink, and fit in. But none of it works anymore. Your spirit seems to be constantly saying, "You're done here." And life becomes louder the more you disregard it. The location you used to call home now seems like a trap. The air becomes dense. The dialogue seems phony. Everything, including people, places, and even foods you once loved, begins to be rejected by your soul. That's a divine extraction in action, not merely restlessness. Life will eliminate all comforting illusions when a selected one is summoned out of a location. What you used to settle for will become intolerable to you. It will become evident to you how much you were giving, how little was returning to you, and how your energy was being used up like a buffet. But no one really saw you. No one paid any attention to what you carried. People refused to gaze into the precious mirror that was you, and now that mirror is being utilized. Nothing is being thrown away, and you're not being theatrical. You're reacting to a spiritual rule that states that the environment begins to evict you when your frequency no longer aligns with it. Instead, Source begins to pull you out. Then it intensifies. Breakdowns, betrayals, disillusionment, and eventually the overpowering want to leave. It's always subtle at first, a whisper, a push. You ultimately outgrew the falsehood, not because you're weak. You're going because the world as you know it can't stand your reality, not to get away from it. You're being drawn to a place where your light is acknowledged and not extinguished. The holy is waiting to crown you on the other side, and you're not just leaving, you're graduating. The second test was to determine whether you would remain in the area where you were no longer fed, The suffering you endured wasn't the true test. It wasn't the loneliness, the losses, the treachery, or even the desertion. Whether you would remain in a location where your soul was hungry just because it was familiar was the real test. If you were afraid to leave a place where you were being ignored, silenced, or drained, would you continue to show up there? That's what set you apart. That's what demonstrated your selection. The majority of folks remain. Most individuals make a compromise. Most people term it stability when they become accustomed to being just partially alive. Not you, however. You arrived to a place when the pain of remaining outweighed the anxiety of going. The comfort of regularity was still attempting to entice you, even though you knew there was no true nutrition left where you were. You realized your purpose was being killed by the work. You were aware that the relationship was crushing you. You almost remained even though you knew the circle surrounding you benefited from your selflessness and quiet. That is the strength of the delusion. When you finally make the decision to choose yourself, the guilt may be so loud. Then something inside of you exploded. You ceased to bargain with your instincts. You ceased requesting authorization to be free. Heaven knew you were ready at that very time. That was the last gate, the precise moment you made the decision to go without finding closure, receiving praise, or having your choice validated by anybody. The crown was made at that time, not when you achieved success or received recognition, but when you left with nothing but your faith. You previously survived hell. Therefore, that wasn't the exam. Since that was all you had ever known, the true test was whether you would continue to act as if it were paradise. Despite your unsteady legs and unclear map, you made the decision to depart. Even though it was a silent choice, it altered your whole destiny. Third, since you endured the greatest period of spiritual seclusion without collapsing, you are among the first. You're being crowned because you not only made it through the seclusion, but you did it without giving up. Silence is too much for most people to bear. They would stop at nothing to keep from being alone themselves. However, you, day after day, month after month, and even year after year, you sat in it. You sat in the quiet, in the bewilderment, in the heartache of feeling invisible and misunderstood. You didn't reduce your frequency to feel accepted, however. That is what makes you unique. You didn't ask to be accepted. You weren't a false person to win others over. You didn't begin acting only to rediscover your humanity. Even though it cost you everything, you remained loyal. In actuality, those who are picked are honed in secret. They do not become leaders by receiving praise. You were buried in holy obscurity while everyone else was striving for fame. You were facing your inner demons, repairing family curses, ending codependent cycles, and talking to God when no one else was around, while others were busy curating their image. Character was what you were developing, not a platform. This crown suits you because of that. You earned it by every quiet struggle, every unseen sacrifice, and every unseen cry. You didn't inherit it. You developed into the kind of person who can bear the responsibility of leadership without letting pride get in the way. In your situation, most people would have gone crazy, but you didn't. You continued to show up for life without any recognition, encouragement, or assurance that anything would ever change. Even when religion didn't make sense, you held on to it. You started with nothing but unrelenting optimism, spiritual tenacity, and unadulterated suffering. You are among the first to be crowned because of this. You showed yourself in the silence, not because you were the loudest person. In order to be trusted with influence, you were trusted with solitude. And no one can dispute who you have become now that your moment has arrived. Fourth, you were the only member of your family to decide to heal rather than conceal. You never fought just for yourself. Every moment of healing, every breakdown you had, every time you opted for truth over comfort, it wasn't simply personal. You were bearing centuries' worth of burdens. Your family was secretly experiencing pain that began long before you were born. like background noise that no one dared to address. However, you heard it, you sensed it, and you turned around and confronted it directly, rather than dismissing it like everyone else did. That's what set you apart. On paper, you weren't the strongest. You weren't the most qualified, the oldest, or the loudest. However, it was you who refused. Emotional avoidance is unacceptable. The hush that concealed abuse must end. Disruption was shielded by the "we don't talk about that" culture. You ceased hiding behind the armor like survival devices worn by everyone else. The conflict ended with you as a result of it. You violated agreements your forefathers unwittingly made. You challenged belief systems that were seen as legally binding. Even when it made you the odd one out, you questioned actions that were accepted as usual. In actuality, seclusion was initiation rather than punishment. Spirit separated you from your family so that you may do what they were unable to. You decided to face them, while they choose to cope. You dug up and detoxed from your anguish, while others buried theirs. The entire foundation of your family was rewired by you. It's not only about switching locations or severing connections now that you're leaving. You're cutting off millennia of misery that has been rehashed. Additionally, you're leaving behind habits that would have imprisoned your future children. This is release, not only mobility. By refusing to carry what was never yours in the first place, you're repairing your lineage in the most radical manner conceivable, not betraying it. And you're climbing, not simply walking away, for that. Number 5. You were destined to outgrow the system loudly and unreservedly, not to repair it. You were never supposed to blend in, and you always knew it in your heart. Something about the way this world operated seemed strange to you from the start. The expectations, the routines, and the regulations never seemed right. Your spirit couldn't handle falsehoods, not because you were disobedient. Nevertheless, the system attempted to program you. It advised you to reject your calling, stifle your instincts, and conform to what was previously acceptable. It taught you to doubt your abilities, dread your own voice, and revere systems that thrived on obedience. And maybe you did for a while. Perhaps you cooperated. Your spirit, however, never did. And that tension you carried was resistance, not weakness. They led you to believe that your job was to repair what was damaged, to remain in damaged areas and improve them. In actuality, however, you were never intended to fix anything that wasn't made for your kind of light. The system was not designed for spirits like yours. Rather, it was designed to silence them, take advantage of them, examine, analyze, and steal from them. Convincing you to remain just long enough to burn out attempting to solve it was the best trick it ever pulled. However, those who were selected were not sent to work as janitors in dilapidated castles. Loudly, shamelessly, and truthfully, you are here to outgrow the machine. You are here to create something new, something holy, something that cannot be tampered with out of fear, greed, or manipulation. You were asked to create a brand new table that doesn't need you to shrink in order to fit in, not to request a place at their table. Because of this, the more you woke up, the more the system pushed back. It knew that your susceptibility to its trickery was growing. It was no longer possible to utilize your energy. You couldn't buy your attention, and by leaving, you're exposing it rather than only rejecting it. You serve as evidence that the system is unable to manage the existence of an alternative, more liberated method. Therefore, you were created to outgrow it entirely and bring others with you, not to cure it. 6th, every spirit that profited from your repression will be offended by your departure. It was never going to be silent after you left. It's your absence that's creating the noise, not the noise you created. Your healing turns become their crisis when someone has made their identity out of your quiet. It became clear how reliant they were on your bondage the instant you opted for freedom. People you thought loved you began behaving strangely because of this. That's why when you stopped minimizing yourself to maintain harmony, the atmosphere changed. Your leaving was a spiritual earthquake, more than just a farewell. Every spirit that had previously depended on your stuckness for stability was shaken by it. For a long time, you were a power source without ever realizing it. You were more than simply someone's friend, kid, lover, or colleague. Unaware that others had figured out how to feed off your unhealed areas, you handed your energy away in bits and pieces. Because being doubtful meant being cooperative, they desired you to be unsure rather than broken. It meant accessible. It implied being easily manipulated. However, you turned into a problem once you began making your own decisions. You stopped defending yourself, and now you're acting different. You started setting limits, and all of a sudden you were too much. You started healing, and now they're insulted. However, their transgression is a confession, not your responsibility. It becomes clear what they really wanted. Not your presence or affection, but your obedience. They were only interested in what you could do for them while you were bound, not in your freedom. So leaving that dynamic seems like a betrayal to them. Leaving for good is thus spiritual warfare, because you're breaking unseen bonds, not simply leaving rooms. With your conscious thinking, you're terminating agreements you never made. Indeed, there will be a reaction. The tail will be twisted by them. They will accuse you of being ungrateful, selfish, and disloyal. How dare you stop being who I needed you to be for me to feel in control, is what they really mean. You don't have to bear that guilt. Being someone's battery was never your destiny. You were destined to be in charge, and here you are. Seventh, the crown is evidence that you didn't sell your soul when it was easy, not merely a mark of honor. The crown is about endurance, not simply elevation. It's about the secret choices you made when no one else was around. The times you chose to sacrifice your soul in order to feel a little safer, a little more visible, a little more loved. The nights you prayed and wept. The days you smiled while quietly fighting your own thoughts. But didn't. You became royal because of it. Because of it, you were untouchable. You prevailed because you remained true to your core when it would have been so simple to sell out. Not because life was good to you. Shortcuts were given to you. You were provided consolation with conditions. Opportunities that were favorable at first glance were presented to you, but they forced you to compromise a holy aspect of yourself. Relationships that promised camaraderie, but came with the quiet cost of dimming your light, were dangled before you. Connections, jobs, and lifestyles all seemed to be benefits, but you knew deep inside that they were traps. Most individuals accept the offer. As night falls, most individuals collapse. However, you didn't. You chose integrity while looking into the dark. Because of such, you are dangerous. Your presence now impacts in a new way because of this. Not because you're flawless, but rather because you're authentic, unowned, unbought, and uncompromised. You've already shown that comfort and fear cannot rule you. Because of this, your crown has a symbolic purpose, rather than being just ornamental. Heaven honors integrity, while this world praises power. It is heavenly acknowledgement of a soul that chose truth when falsehoods were more lucrative, a soul that chose healing when denial was more comfortable, and a soul that declared, "I'd rather walk alone in pain than lie to myself in luxury." Because of this time is very holy. You're being confirmed, not given a crown as a reward. Not only did you survive, but you also passed examinations that most people were unaware they were taking. And now, since it was, the crown rests on your head, as if it was shaped by your wounds. Eighth, you've outlived the Matrix's manipulation strategies. Therefore, you're going. You're not going to leave because you're heartless or aloof. The emotional bait isn't working. Therefore, you're going. The manipulative techniques that kept you hooked, such as gaslighting, guilt-tripping, fear of desertion, and dread of failing other people are no longer effective. You've received enough spiritual instruction to recognize a guilt bomb at a glance. The neural system of survival is no longer a part of you. The previous responses are no longer a part of you. They no longer cause worry, self-doubt, or the need to apologize for your presence. Instead, they bring about clarity, calm, and stillness. And more than anything, it frightens people. The dread of being misinterpreted no longer governs you. Despite being misunderstood, misquoted, undervalued, and even maligned, you have already managed to live. You have already experienced what it's like to be the bad guy in someone else's victim narrative. And something inside you triggered immunity when it didn't kill you. The game ceased to function. The Matrix used all of its strategies to keep you little. It made an attempt to use your empathy against you. It persuaded you that it was selfish to choose yourself. It created whole systems to penalize your limits and reward your people-pleasing behavior. However, your neurological system ceased reacting at some point. Out of consciousness, not numbness, you were able to see through the smoke. The playbook was decrypted by you, and now you don't recoil when they don't show you love. Clarity is not something you seek from those who have never desired to provide it. Projections are not a subject of debate. The whole system that taught you to violate yourself in order to get short-term favor has outgrown you. Because there is nothing left in you to cling to, your departure seems so definitive. No aperture, no hook. You sever all of their strings, so they can't use the same ones to get to you. You're walking immune now, not simply walking away. Unshakably free is the rarest kind of risk in a society where emotional control is the norm. 9. You were the flame that reveals covert motives, not simply the person who survived the fire. You weren't only following the rules. You were being changed by the fire, not just surviving it. You were made, not broken, by the fire. And now, your presence lights everything around it, doing more than just destroying the falsehoods. You've always been the mirror, the one others avoided, since your energy made it impossible for them to remain in their delusions, even if they are unaware of this. You didn't need to blame anybody or reveal anything. You made them see what they were concealing, even from themselves, just by being authentic and living your truth. And for that reason, once you depart, situations fall apart. The loss of the one item that supported their fictitious worlds is more than simply a physical void. They mourn the protection your light provided, not just your companionship. The flaws in their facades begin to appear when you aren't there to confront them, or to reflect back to them their genuine intentions. The falsehoods that were buried far below the surface start to emerge. The personalities they created and the masks they wore begin to fall apart. Your departure is a spiritual uncovering rather than just a leaving, and that's why they find it so unnerving. They are angry with the reality you made them face, not with you. Their world was never intended for you. It was never intended for your energies to coincide with their lies. They lived in shadows, and your light was too strong for them. And now that you're gone, they have nothing to conceal, just the unvarnished reality, free of illusions and diversions. And for that reason, the collapse seems so real. Because all they were pretending to be is revealed when you leave, and the disguise is over.